So hi folks, Roger Green here. Welcome to the Alchemy of Prague. And this is going to be the fourth Alchemy of Prague. The first one was about 10 or 11 years ago, where I sponsored Vincent Bridges, the famous esoteric historian from North Carolina to Prague. And we had that event at the Donkey and Cradle, the Edward Kelly Tower, and Vincent deeply went into the whole history of John Dee and so forth. But we also had Paul Harris, the inventor of the Theraphi and a number of other inventions, teaching the old-fashioned alchemy. So we actually set up the old distillation lab, and we make plant medicines, and we take you through all of the Western esoteric dynamics of the cosmic, the macro to the micro. Very, very similar to the Taoist tradition in one sense, with the yin and yang, the heaven and the earth, and so forth. But we take a completely sort of Western esoteric approach to that. And then we're off to Chesney-Kromov with adventures along the way. And here I am in Brno, and another sort of magical area of the Czech Republic. And essentially the theme of this is to learn, alchemy is a bit of a loose term these days, so we're going to go into the depths of the history of it, and you couldn't get any more significance of the venue that we have in Prague, the basement of the Edward Kelly Tower. Right? But the whole theme here is using nature and using the transformational aspects of nature. So the theme is sort of ancient to futuristic alchemy. So here we are in Brno, and I'm with Bob. We've had a wonderful day running around, and we're going to be doing the second segment of the Alchemy of Prague in Brno, called the Advanced Energy Systems, where we're going to present a smorgasbord of really, really interesting cutting-edge technologies that's going to take us into the new paradigm. So guys, I've been here for the last week in Prague and Brno, and what I've been doing for you is checking out all the venues, all of the sourcing, all of the wonderful hotels, and things like the restaurants and all of that, to make this trip very, very special. It is a once in a lifetime. No, I don't put these on every year. This is the fourth one over 10 or 11 years. So it's going to be a very, very special occasion, beginning on the 1st of September at 1 o'clock at the old clock tower in the center of Prague, right? So I hope you can join us. It's really going to be a lot of fun. In the past, we've had just a magnificent time in the Czech Republic. As I say, it's just an incredibly magical space. I've personally been here over 100 times. I first came here in the early 90s, and then I put on my first international conference in 1998, and I've been teaching in the Czech Republic ever since. I think I've taught in just about every little town of the Czech Republic. Right? And of course, we ran our Academy of Healing Nutrition here for 10 years as well. Right? So hope to see you soon. And as I say, it's going to be a very, very special occasion.
Hello, welcome in house at the Donkey in the Cradle. It's the house where lived Edward Kelly, very famous alchemist from time of Rudolf II. And it was time which we name Golden Age of Alchemy in Prague. But you maybe know that alchemy is very old science, or as I say, that it's something between science and philosophy, or a combination of this, because the scientifical is chemistry, physics and so on, pharmacy. And the philosophical part is that alchemy is every time changing, and every time only from bad to good, no time the different way. And it starts in old Egypt, old China, old India, and from this old civilization comes to old Arabic. It's the reason why alchemy is from Arabic, alchemia, and it's still here. You probably think that it finished in Rudolf II time. Not. It's still alive. And it's reason why you will come here in Prague, in house at the Donkey in the Cradle, for this great action prepared for you.
Mr. Harris, what are you up to there in your lab?
Good day. Yeah, good day, Roger. Well, we got a bit of a distillation going on here right now, and yeah, the art of distillation. That's what we'll be doing in Prague this year.
Yep. Well, for those who are new to this game of ours, the Alchemy of Prague, this is the fourth time we're going to do the Alchemy of Prague. It pretty much started over 10 years ago. And we had Vincent Bridges and Dan Winter and Paul. And so we're having this in the famous alchemical location of the Edward Kelly and the John Dee Tower in the foothills of the Prague Castle. And we're actually in the basement. And Paul and the team is going to set up an alchemical lab, and we're going to take you through the history of alchemy and what it is, its definition, and the overall theme of this event is ancient and future alchemy. And we're going to have a little session with Paul and Bob Greenyer about the future alchemy, but for now we're just going to focus on the first part of the Alchemy of Prague, beginning on September the 1st at the Donkey and Cradle. So we've got a long history with this place because Vincent Bridges ended up living there, and he wrote his book on the missing years of Shakespeare, and there's lots of dramas around John Dee and Edward Kelly. So Paul, maybe just tell the folks, in your opinion, why do you think ancient alchemy art and science is important in this day and age?
Right. Yeah, well, basically, it is the core fundamental. I see it as the tree of all sciences. Really, the alchemists of old were the original pioneers in forming modern scientific method, and they were philosophers as well. So they made their observations of nature, which is really what science is understanding, classifying, categorizing different aspects of nature and phenomenon around us. So the alchemists were sort of the first to really do that. They also had more of a spiritual side of their concepts as well, understanding the way nature works, kind of relied on their basic premise that everything came from the one, through the one, to many things, and will go back to the one thing again. So when you look at it on a modern scientific idea, it's kind of the concept of a big bang where everything came from nothing and then everything is here and eventually it'll go back. And all the different sciences have kind of been the trees on the, like chemistry is just a branch on the tree of alchemy, really. So it evolved into modern day chemistry. And what's really interesting and exciting about these times is we're actually seeing that the alchemists had a lot of things right, and many things that were kind of like, dismissed over the years. Modern physics and everything is starting, when we get into the quantum realms and that, starting to understand, transmutation, for instance, that was always thought to be just a myth, and the alchemists were charlatans. And I remember when I was in my science class in grade 8, and I'd already been reading alchemy books and had a good grasp on the fundamentals, and my teacher said, "Oh, well, chemistry kind of evolved from the alchemists, but those guys were a bunch of kooks. They didn't know what they were talking about. They thought they could turn lead into gold." Ha ha ha. I was like, put up my hand, and I was like, well, actually, there's more to it than that. So basically, through observations of nature, what we're trying to do with alchemy is help the evolution of nature along. So understanding the principles and using those and emulating nature in the laboratory, and then we're assisting to evolve that. So if we're making a plant medicine, let's say, we would be taking the principles out of the medicine, the sulfur, the salt, and the mercury. And here we're doing the mercury. And basically we're evolving it. So we're taking it from its crude form or prima materia, or what it is, and through the process of distillation, which is just a natural process emulating the Earth's natural processes, where water would evaporate, go up into the clouds, and then recondense back down into rain and into the rivers, and go back to the ocean, around and around. So the alchemists saw this as a microcosmic version of the atmosphere of the Earth, basically. And so we're refining the essence from the crude matter into the very fine spirits. And alcohol, ethanol, is the mercury of the plant kingdom. So
Because there's a lot of tie-up between the Taoist and the Vedic and the Western Hermetic traditions. It's just a terminology difference, isn't it? They all have the same energetic view, and this beautiful scientific poetry of life and all of the elements around us. So what sort of medicines are we going to be making?
We're going to be making spagyric tinctures. So the word spagyric was coined by Paracelsus, and it basically means to take something apart, refine it, and put it back together. So that's what we'll be doing. And we'll be separating the plants. We'll probably work with rosemary, and we'll be separating it into the sulfur, salt, and the mercury, which is basically the body, the spirit, and the soul of the plant. So we'll be taking the spirits in this way, and capturing the soul through an essential oil distillation. So we'll be actually doing an oil distillation, and then we'll take all three of those components and combining them back together and to make a more powerful medicine. So it's like your next level.
It concentrates those essences, which is
Yeah.
why
If you were to
you sort
make-
of separate them, concentrate them, then bring them back to enhance the medicinal properties.
Yeah, exactly. You could make a simple tincture, which is what you have available, in your health food store or whatever, where you just take a herb and put it in alcohol and let it macerate for 6 weeks and filter it and bottle it. That's the basic tincture. And so we're take it to a whole nother level, where we divide it up, separate it, refine it, and recombine it back together, which makes for quite powerful medicine. And
are you going to be making gold in Prague?
Yeah, we might be able to have some gold products anyway. I mean, some of the gold processes, when you get into so that's the plant kingdom. We start in the plant kingdom to kind of get our sea legs,
and then we go to the metal.
Make sure nobody poisons themselves or anything like that. And so in alchemy, you basically try to learn the ropes through the plant kingdom. So it'll be a plant kingdom, pretty good comprehensive weekend covering all the grounds in the plant kingdom, and you'll come away with enough information to go home and be able to set up your own little laboratory and
Yeah,
make
and
some
just on that point, Paul, you know, we've done this several times now, including, you know, your workshops in New York. And we just encourage people, we just show you how practical it is to actually, it doesn't cost much to set up a distillation lab. You know, you can sort of start to get your head over this with like a weekend training with you. And, you know, these medicines are very expensive to buy, whereas if you make them yourself, you know, the whole family, your relatives, you know, and it's sort of like another way of just tuning into that, taking control of your health and, you know, longevity. And it's often left out of the whole biohacking longevity world, this sort of ancient knowledge. So yeah, it's just a whole other new, for us, you know, angle into, you know, health and vitality and developing your soul and your spirit and understanding these elements of nature.
Yeah, and it's a really great way to connect with the herbs and really understand the herbs too, because all the plants have different qualities and different quantities of these different aspects. So as you work with them more and more, you really get a deeper understanding of the plants themselves, which is really nice.
So in the workshop, you're going to be covering the history of the Hermetic alchemical tradition, and there's lots of interesting characters, you know, from the last 1,000 years, right? And of course, that will take us up to John Dee and Edward Kelly and all the interesting dramas around there, including the missing years of Shakespeare. And we'll have Eva with us as well, who spent a lot of time with Vincent and knows those stories really well. Last time we did the Alchemy of Prague, we made the spagyrics of cannabis.
Right.
And that was a very successful workshop.
Yeah.
And so then what we're going to do is we're going to go on a tour of Kisner Kromov, which again has this incredible historical reference to alchemy, because that's pretty much where the ancient alchemy came back into the Western world, you know, around 700 AD, etc. And it's just a beautiful sort of alchemical township. And then we go on to Brno, where the whole theme of this is ancient alchemy and establishing those principles in Prague. But then we have the future alchemy, which is about taking those principles, which is the bottom line with all of this, folks, is transmutation. That's what links ancient with what I call future alchemy. And future alchemy for us is working with the power of nature, understanding it in terms of, you know, alchemical definitions, also just like good old yin and yang and the Tao of physics and understanding the world of energy and prana and chi. And then talking about the technologies that are emerging out of this art of alchemy. So just tell us a little bit about your thoughts on ancient and future alchemy.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things I always say to my students in the classes, because everybody, even you know, alchemy is a kind of a funny word. It's kind of scattered and used in all kinds of different ways and things these days. But real, you know, people who are doing real alchemical work, they consider, you know, doing this type of lab work and practical work. And one of the things I always say to my students is, you know, everybody's in the alchemy community, and that is really replicating older recipes and reading old books, deciphering the cryptic texts and trying to figure out what they were doing and emulating what they were doing. And I say, you know, you guys should look at what's going on in the world today and see where we are, because back in the days of the traditional alchemists, they were the cutting edge scientists of their time. They were exploring the new domains in that. So I've always encouraged them to take your alchemical principles and philosophy and apply it to the modern day world, and you'll discover a whole realm of new things. And so that's basically what we're doing, is looking at how to apply these kind of techniques in a modern day sense, and realizing things on a very small nano scale, all the way up to cosmic scale, because that's part of the science, is understanding that fractal recursive nature between as it is above and so it is below, between the macrocosm and the microcosm. So we're going to be looking at very high-tech ways to utilize energy technologies to do transmutations in a modern sense, and have energy sources and all kinds of wild and new wonderful things, for sure. Yeah.
Sounds great, Paul. We're all
Yeah.
pretty excited about it.
Yeah,
So
it's going
just
to
to
be
finish
fun.
off, tell us about what you got brewing in the background there.
Right now I'm just rectifying some wine. You can see it's boiling over. Got about 72 degrees at our distillation head here, and it's condensing through the condenser. And normally it's cold water running through here, and I have it on a pump, but it's a little loud, so I've got it turned off right now. But there's enough water in there to cool it, and then it's condensing here, and it's dripping down. It's probably about it'll probably be about 80% alcohol, 75–80% alcohol coming over here in the simple distillation. So this will just be one of the types of distillation that we'll be doing on the first weekend.
Yeah, we're going to cover a couple, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice.
lots of tickets. Yeah.
And we get to take home some of the medicines we make. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, great, Paul. We'll
All
be seeing
right.
you soon.
Good
Cheers.
talking to you, Raj. Take care. Bye-bye.
You can see sign Kelly Tower, because many people, not Czech people, know this house as a Kelly Tower, by this tower. And this tower is one of the oldest wooden stairs in Prague. It's from 16th century, probably made by Edward Kelly, who made it as a symbolical spiral of life. This theory comes from Vincent Bridges, who helped us with our alchemical museum in this house. He told us many things, many details about Edward Kelly, John Dee, and also William Shakespeare in Prague. And we know that Kelly Tower is really named by Kelly, who lives here last 3 years of his life. And in attic, he has a probably laboratory. We have also there laboratory. But for Czech people, it's well known this house at the donkey in a cradle. But this name is also in combination with Edward Kelly, because when he lived here, also was here a lesser town gossip, Anna Hrdlová. She didn't like Edward Kelly. She told that he is charlatan, he makes something with devil, he has a multicolor smoke from chimneys. But one day she has a sick baby, and suddenly charlatan was good for her, comes here searching for Edward Kelly. He was like upstairs in his tower, and when he looks down, he saw two things. First, who asked him for help, this strange woman Hrdlová. And the second, his long hair climbs. It was possible to see that it has cutted earth. And in this time, it means that he has a problem with law. So his secret was suddenly well known, because when gossip know it, everybody know it. And he didn't help to her baby either. He makes him donkey earth. It's reason why this house is named a donkey in a cradle. But don't be afraid, Edward Kelly is not here, and he will not make anything to you.
Okay. Well, hi guys, I'm here with Bob Greenyer and Paul Harris, and as you know, we're going to be doing the Advanced Energy Seminar in Brno, and we're just going to have a little chat about the topics and give you a little bit of an overview of the dynamics of this very, very important seminar, because we are breaking new ground with really interesting, emerging, cutting-edge technologies. So, guys, just give us some of the guidelines and principles that you operate from to begin with.
Sure.
Well, I'll go. Yeah. Basically, we're an open organization, the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. We've been operating since 2012 in the name of the recent rediscoverer of what was called cold fusion, but it's a coherent matter process called Martin Fleischmann and his colleague Stanley Pons. And he sadly passed away 3 weeks before I went to my first conference on the subject. And it was a bunch of guys that went there, and we set up a project to verify other people's technology and to see if there was any truth in the claims. The reason being is that no one was getting any younger. People were dying off, literally. And no one, when someone did have some success in the field, they were either invested into silence or they were, made to spin plates until they passed on. And so, or they all wanted to win the Nobel Prize, so they didn't want to help anyone else do that. So we came in as an independent body, set up as such, and wanted to do the science in a really new way. And that was to publish the protocols, our intention, and the actual data live on the internet. We called it Live Open Science, and it was the first time it was done, to the best of our knowledge, in the kind of field that we were in. And we did replicate something. We replicated Francesco Celani's constant and wire Lena reactor. We produced 12.5% on an experiment that started at 12 seconds past 12 minutes past 12 on the 12th of the 12th of the 12th. And I presented that data in Rome on the 14th of December 2012. From that point, it was we couldn't put it down, essentially. People have come into and out of the project, but fundamentally it's an idea. It's an idea to take science which has been developed by many, many researchers who've given the best part of their lives to develop and expand upon the early understanding, both of Martin Fleischmann and even people that went before him. And
what would you be presenting at the Advanced Energy seminars coming up?
Well, we will be presenting actually some of the original Celani cells that we found that excess heat in. In fact, I think it's a cell that produced a certain type of emission, but they'll be there as props for you to look at. We'll show you a dusty fusion reactor, and you'll be able to see that operating. We'll also be showing a cavitation-based experiment, and this is basically standing wave sound in water that seems to be extremely good at producing the effect. And you will get a chance to conduct those experiments, and you'll be able to have a look at the material that's produced under the microscope, and you'll also be able to see what we have observed on these systems, both in that simple experiment of ultrasound with a metal and water, and in much more complicated systems that are producing excess heat and are being converted into practical technologies for thermal production.
Nice.
Wonderful. Paul Harris, you've got a real great background in a lot of inventions, but so what's your intentions with the Advanced Energy Summit coming up?
Yeah, well, I'd like to talk about some of the things I've been doing over the years. I mean, I've been following Bob for quite a while, and it's really exciting how many pieces of the puzzle he's put together here. I first came across some of the phenomenon that he's been researching like 20 years ago in some of my reactors and stuff like that. So what I'd like to do is talk about some of the history leading up to there, and show and tell for some of the projects that I've worked on over the years as independent researcher. Did a lot with plasma, high frequency, high voltage systems. And currently working on some new variations of some old ideas, and I think these are exciting times, and everybody's putting it together. And I've spent so many years in the laboratory, closet, not talking about these things. I think it's pertinent now. We are on the cusp of some major realizations and major developments that are all going to come out of the garage here real soon. And these are really exciting times. And I think we all have to work together and come together and get this kind of technology out there.
I think that's exactly it, Paul. Really, these things literally have been under the radar for so many years, almost completely unbelievable. And whilst they are emerging in patents and have been buried in patents that no one understood,
Right.
It's the confluence of both need and realization, and that we are literally all in this together. I don't know if the recent events in recent years has honed people's focus. When you realize you haven't got the freedom, you can understand to do things you want to do. You can maybe understand how that feels for people all over the world that haven't got that in from day one in their lives. And really, this technology has the opportunity to free humanity, and potentially in a way that removes the kind of damage that we do to the environment in the ordinary ways that we produce energy, and also at the same time preserve the biosphere. So it's a really exciting time to be alive, and we welcome you to come and join us in what we think is our contribution, building on the incredible foundations that have been laid by so many going forward and into the future.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me just read out some of the topics that we're going to be covering at the Advanced Energy Seminars. For those who know it, I've been running the Academy of Sacred Geometry, and I've always said, there's a lot of applications for sacred geometry, not just architecture and mathematics, etc., but of course using it for advancing our technology. So applied sacred geometry, applied modern alchemy. So there's a theme of ancient and futuristic alchemy, and the key bottom line here is, the transmutation of nature. We've got down here the Theraphi. Paul Harris is the inventor of the Theraphi and an absolute expert in bioactive plasma fields. And the next stage of the Theraphi is the Teslatron, based on Nikola Tesla's work, but also Guy Obolensky, who passed away 4 years ago. So this is devoted to his legacy, the Teslatron, which Paul has been working on actively. And you guys coming to Brno will get the latest on the development of the Teslatron, which really takes the Theraphi to the nth degree. We're going to be looking at cold fusion. Bob has given lots of presentations at the International Cold Fusion conferences, which I've also had the privilege to go along to. It is a very exciting emerging field now. I've been an active participant in cold fusion investments and cold fusion projects. We'll be looking at the thunderstorm, which is taking a lot of the front seats at the moment in emerging technologies. Very exciting. We'll hear all about that from his work, from Bob's work on validating and looking at deeply into the thunderstorm technology. There's themes of waste to energy, themes of understanding what we call phase conjugation and neg entropy. For those who don't know the term, it's the opposite to entropy.
I'm going to step in there, Roger.
Sure.
Essentially, everyone thinks that you can't change the world's path from something that's neat and then increasing the entropy. But there are two structures in the universe, and they're linked, that produce neg entropy, and they are the tornado and the tornado in a ring, which is the ring vortex. They are literally the only things in the universe that are able to create neg entropy, and they assemble matter. And this comes down to your starting point about sacred geometry. I never in my wildest dreams imagined that the sacred geometry would play into this field. But only when you start learning and looking and learning from nature by looking at it, do you realize that the vortex is everywhere, and that when you get, just put a plate in water and you get a vortex and an anti-vortex, and the actual pattern that the hydrodynamic vortex forms is exactly and precisely the sacred geometry in its best form. And this actually occurs not only in water, but it occurs in the air, like on the wingtips of a plane or in the flight of a bumblebee, but it also occurs in the ether. And it is the thing that causes both the tornado and the closed ring torus form of the tornado, and therefore it is the route to neg entropy. And by doing this, you are able to do the transmutation. You are able to gain energy by extracting energy and repurposing it. And so it's one simple structure. And the fact that the ancient people knew this and they codified it into all of their most important symbols that they revered, I never would have imagined I would find myself learning this at this stage in my life. And I want you guys to understand it implicitly too.
I particularly like the top of the columns, the capital, and the spiral going on it. It's like it's been there.
It's very simple. It's called the Ionic column. It's from Ionia, and it's from the same period as Anaximander. Anaximander was the first person to look at what nature was doing, and it's a vortex and an anti-vortex, and we call it ions. Why? Because Faraday was electrolyzing water, and he saw a vortex one way and a vortex the other way, and some polymath came in and looked at his experiment and says, oh, it looks like an ionic column. So they called ions because of the ionic column, which came about because someone first looked at how nature was operating.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful thing.
On that message, we'll see you all in Brno, folks.
See you there.
Looking forward to it. See you there.
Ciao.
Hi guys, I'm really looking forward to welcoming you to Brno for the latter part of the Alchemy of Prague conference, where we will be talking about advanced energy systems. And one thing I want to talk about right now is kind of energy that has been considered for, well, basically all of time. And some people call it prana, some people call it etheric matter, some people call it chi. There are various names given to this thing. And some people would say that it's actually embedded in all matter. Well, I've been working over a number of years with a group of scientists in Russia, as well as all over the world. And this has been a volunteer project called the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. And we started out working with some Italian researchers, principally Francesco Celani. And then we moved on to working with some Indian and some Japanese and some American and some UK scientists. But what recently happened was possibly an explanation to Irving Langmuir's hydrogen torch excess energy observations, where he had hydrogen synthesized and put through an arc discharge, it would create, in theory, atomic hydrogen, which would then recombine. And it would appear that he saw excess energy produced, in fact, quite a fantastic amount of excess energy. And I think he was convinced, I might be wrong in saying this, but he was convinced not to really push this observation ahead by Niels Bohr. Now, what was causing that excess energy has been much debated over the years. There was a book published a number of decades ago where they said there was some form of energy that was kind of lost in the production of atomic hydrogen that was then regained, and you got that regaining of that energy for free. Well, Russian researchers working at Dubna, this is an area of nuclear research in north of Moscow, specifically Alexander Shishkin, Vladimirovich Dubovik, who discovered the toroidal moment, and Corolles, they are suggesting that this is a hidden energy within matter. And in fact, in 2017, I think in January, the CIA released some documents on their website. They were declassified, and one particular document, A Journey to Alpha Centauri, discussed a method by which hidden energy could be extracted from matter through a kind of phase change. And the interesting part about that is that they noted in 1992 that this was effectively a superset of what was being investigated and named, you could say misnamed, cold fusion in 1989, that was publicized as cold fusion, the work of Martin Fleischmann and Stanley Pons, after which the project is named Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. And so they said this is just a simple kind of boiling water type version of releasing this hidden energy within matter. Well, you're going to learn at the conference potentially what that hidden energy is and how it can manifest and interact with other matter to do things like remediation of nuclear waste and production of energy that is not solar derived. A lot of energy that we use in our modern lives is solar derived, whether that's wind, solar power, obviously, effectively hydroelectric is solar derived because the water is lifted from water bodies and rained down onto mountains. And one could argue that wood that's burnt and biofuel, the extra energy that is in that you release and use, that comes from sun, and ultimately things like coal, that comes from sun. So nuclear energy is one of the only ways that you can get energy that isn't ultimately coming from the sun, either in the current or the past. And this type of energy is actually a type of extraction of energy that is inherent to the cosmos at any point in the cosmos. And so this allows us to have a new kind of energy that is potentially inexhaustible, and it allows us to make new types of devices that can take humanity forward. I would very much like to see you and to share with you my insights and those of the people that I've worked with over the last 10 years in Brno in September.
So, welcome to Brno. This is Náměstí Svobody, which is Freedom Square to the Czech people. I think freedom from the Soviet oppression. Tanks used to roll in here, and this started the fall of the Iron Curtain, as it were. And behind me, you can see there is the Plague Column, which is in many of the towns throughout Europe, commemorating those that died in the great loss of life during the last millennia. And over here we have the famous clock, the black clock over there, which is quite popular here, and wonderful shops and eateries that you can enjoy when you join us here in September.
So Bob, we're doing ancient alchemy in Prague, and then we're coming here to Brno, and we're doing futuristic alchemy. So can you, and of course the underlying theme here is transmutation, natural transmutation that happens in nature. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you feel is the essence of future alchemy?
Well, it's the same as it ever was. Future alchemy is actually the same as past alchemy. I don't know if you're aware, but there's transmutation of elements going on in your body all of the time. In your body you have 1 part per trillion, that's 1 times 10 to the 12, carbon atoms are carbon-14. And these atoms decay, and it's that decay of those atoms that you receive when you're alive that is the basis for carbon-14 radiocarbon dating. And what happens is that carbon-14 decays to nitrogen-14, and that is a transmutation in your body. It's a particle decay. Now, there is another one that goes on in your body, and that's with potassium. So maybe you know, but bananas are a good source of potassium. If you take a banana and you put it next to a radiation detector, what you will detect is a high energy beta that comes out as that potassium decays. And apparently, if you accept the birth of the universe having happened a period of time ago, potassium is the shortest lived beta radioisotope. And so it apparently decays at like 1/3 of the lifetime of the universe. And so there is transmutation of a kind going on in your body all of the time. Well, what we will be discussing is how these processes may be accelerated to do, for instance, energy generation, or how they may be accelerated to remove nuclear waste. So a lot of nuclear waste is actually beta isotopes. This is just a type of decay where a high-speed electron comes out of a nucleus. And this, it would seem, can be accelerated. And what you're doing in that instance is you're manipulating the matter. And you could argue that, let's say, it takes 11 years for tritium to decay. This is a heavy isotope of hydrogen. And you make that happen in 2 minutes. You've kind of accelerated time. So effectively what you might argue is we are using something that gives the appearance of accelerating time. So you're not only manipulating matter, you're manipulating, to all intents and purposes, if you consider the change in that to be due to time, you're changing the rate of time for that particular atom. So we'll be discussing matter manipulation, and there's very many different ways this can manifest itself. Everyone knows that metals are normally quite strong. Well, they are held together by electrons that have a relationship with the nuclei and the other electrons in the metal. And sometimes it would appear that with these kind of processes that we will discuss, you can change the way the electrons hold the metal together without having to heat it. And this is what one John Hutchison apparently did in 1979. And I have here with me some samples that were produced by John Hutchison here. This here is a metal sample, and it has these very unusual kind of fracture, sort of putty-like nature to it. And here is another example here, and this was produced in 2007, 2008. And this was a rectangular bar stock that was on a non-conducting insulating base, something like a plastic beer crate or a piece of hardboard, and then using static electric fields of a high potential, that is the volts over a space of a number of meters was a lot, and then using interacting electromagnetic waves and a little bit more besides, which we can go into, and you'll be able to understand it when we've talked through it. It's able to manipulate in this case, aluminium atoms, such that they form magnetic structures in there that is able to twist and make plastic at room temperature the aluminium. And so this is like manipulating the metal so that it can be formed in a cold, non-thermal way. And this was discussed by a colonel in the American Army, who unfortunately died a few years ago, called Tom Bearden. And he discusses that in this book, fer-de-lance, which is a type of snake from South America, very dangerous snake. But he discusses in this book and other books where he sent a team over in 1992 to Moscow to look at work that was done by people on the fringes of the Soviet energetics research program. And they demonstrated using a certain type of electromagnetic setup where they could turn metal into like a plastic jelly, and they could push it into a mold and then drain something out of it and do what's called cold metal forming. And so that is essentially what John Hutchison was doing, but not in 1992, in 1979. Okay? And this work that John Hutchison did led to the work of Ken Shoulders and the discovery of exotic vacuum objects. And in our work at the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, it would appear that we have, by using deep observation of John Hutchison samples, we have come to the realization that there are these fractal toroidal structures, and we will explain those in such a way that it will be very clear to understand what they are. But these are the things that are able to interact with electrons and even some things that are attributed as aspects of dark matter. And this is leading into the chi and the prana and the life force that runs through all matter, and allows you to change the property of matter in all kinds of different fundamental ways. That is to accelerate time, to potentially freeze time, to manipulate it on a sort of mechanical way in very low energy ways rather than using thermal or whatever, and also to potentially synthesize matter, that is from energy forms which are not what we would call solid condensed matter, into solid condensed matter, from some type of matter, like for instance aluminium here, and you can see this looks, you know, almost like it's corroded or whatever, but there are elements that would appear to be synthesized on this, and so that's transmutation of matter from one element to another, but also transmutation of matter back into energy. And it is this latter aspect, or capturing the hidden energy within the matter, where it gives us the opportunity for revolutionary types of engagement with matter to release useful prime force for doing work to improve the condition of humanity and to maintain the biosphere and improve it. So that's what we look forward to discussing with you here in Brno in September.
So Bob, you're one of the few scientists that I've actually met who uses yin and yang in their presentations. You know, the yin and yang are the two primal forces of the universe, and you think this basic terminology would be used a lot more in academia and science, but it seems like a term that's too casual for mainstream scientists to use. So really, you know, I've been to a dozen or so academic conferences on cold fusion and energy and hydrogen, etc. And I recognize the yin and yang energetics going on, but it's never used. But you're the first scientist to actually start to use yin and yang. The audience accepts it. You know, the audience is full of academia and PhDs, and they immediately accept it. You know, so tell us a little bit more what your work around plasmoids, define plasmoids. You know, these kind of fundamental aspects of, you know, how the universe works. You know, with a lot of people know about the torus and the magnetic field, the basic sort of magnetic field of sucking energy in and pushing energy out. So just give us your yin and yang Tao of physics version here.
Well, very simply, in the beginning there was the word, and it's sound that really starts everything, but sound is just a form of vibration that we can hear. There are other forms of vibration, and Tesla would argue that sound and vibration are the secret to the universe, and really that is the case. Now, any form of vibration gone into any kind of fluid or other medium will start to produce turbulence, and you've got shear forces and so forth. So imagine you have a plate and you place that plate into water in a sunny day, like in a swimming pool, and you push that plate half submerged in the water. It produces around the edges of that plate a vortex and an anti-vortex, and these two vortices, they combine into what's called a phallico-soliton, which is basically like a little wormhole, but it's not, but it joins the vortex and the anti-vortex together. Well, this is what also happens, but in a full ring form, when someone would blow a smoke ring from their mouth, okay? And that has a vortex on one side and an anti-vortex on the other side, okay? And that effectively is your kind of 69, okay? And which is your kind of yin and yang. And what happened was, we started our project out, the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, replicating and attempting to validate or otherwise different systems in the low energy nuclear reactions field. And the requirement that we were told to prove these kind of matter manipulations was that we were needing to see gamma, X-ray or neutrons in the emissions from these reactors. Now, we did see some emissions, but they didn't look like any of those things, and it took us a long time to realize what they were. But in the intervening time, we met a professor who discovered the nickel hydrogen system back in 1989 in August, when there was the Paolo di Siena, this famous horse race that occurs in Siena, and he had this biology experiment that went wrong. And what it was, he had a little mouse brain cell, and it was supported on a piece of nickel with an electrical discharge to keep it alive. And then what he would do is he would flush the oxygen containing atmosphere in this piece of apparatus with some hydrogen, and that would start causing the mouse brain cell to die. And he repeated this experiment a number of times. Now, the point of this experiment was to find out if there was any chemicals that could be used to prevent the death of a brain cell for medical purposes. Cutting to the chase here, he would freeze the chemistry after a certain period of time with liquid helium, which is the coldest substance known to man. And this would then freeze the chemistry in place. Now, what actually happened was, whilst this horse race was going on outside in one August in 1989, was the thing started to boil 250 watts rather, of cryogenic cooling. And this allowed him to, he didn't understand what was going on. What in this little piece of nickel exposed to hydrogen was causing this energy release that was allowing this 250 watts of cryogenic cooling to be boiled off, and so this started a journey for him, and we engaged with this researcher, Professor Francesco Piantelli, in January of 2015. And during the week that we had the honor of his company, he told us something which was very profound for me. He said, "Don't tell nature what it is, let it show you." And so from that moment on, I personally decided to change the approach to researching this field. And that was, don't be told what we should tell nature should do, but just look at what it's actually doing. And by looking at various samples from various researchers, including our own work, over a number of years, a certain pattern started to emerge. And it was a pattern of this kind of thing that I described at the beginning, which is a hydrodynamic vortex. Okay? And when you start to understand a hydrodynamic vortex, these are the things that come off aerofoils on a plane. Okay? They come off the wingtips on a bird, not only as I described in the swimming pool. And this, when you look at a hydrodynamic vortex, it actually produces a circle whose radius is intersecting by another circle, and it produces the Vesica Pisces of the sacred geometry. And a half circle meets in the middle like that, okay? and it actually has another subdivision in that. And so this appeared to be the pattern that was working through all of these different systems, and it's driven by vibration, of which one vibration would be sound, but also if you vibrate material at much higher frequencies than you can hear and much lower, these are called phonons. So this is kind of like sound in matter. Okay, and of course vibration of another fluid, one might call it the fluid of the ether, you could say is light vibration. So all of these things are vibration at different frequencies. And so you can imagine these same kind of structures would occur that we see. And what happened was we had an accidental discovery. It was using ultrasound with a metal foil, and we saw ultimately these cones with a pit, and this was joined to a pit with a cone. And when you looked at those from the top view, they had exactly this magnetohydrodynamic structure, a hydrodynamic structure, but with magnetism involved in there. And what it shows when you overlay the sacred geometry and the other structures that were in there, it exactly shows the yin and the yang, the moon and the sun, respectively, the bringer, the condenser of light and the bringer of life, the negentropy and the entropy, and these two work together. And so, and we found this now in many systems, and this led to an understanding that if you have something going around in a loop, it has to have two torus, one pointing in one direction and one pointing in the other. And this goes back to the early research that was commissioned by the Department of Energy by one Winston and conducted by one Winston Bostic at Princeton University and at Los Alamos National Laboratory and one other major lab. And his job was to convert the hydrogen bomb into domestic usable fusion. And he created two tori out of plasma and fired them towards each other over a magnetic field. And what they did is they joined in this sacred geometry structure and started orbiting around each other. And he, like Lord Kelvin before him, started to think that these toroidal structures, when merging together, could explain all forms of matter, from subatomic particles all the way up to the formation of the galaxies. And our work supports that claim by Lord Kelvin in the 1800s and by Bostic in the 1900s. This work was picked up by Ken Shoulders, who is investigating the person that John Hutchison, that we've had a lot of engagement from. And together, this looks like how matter is made and how it is unmade. How it is made is the yin, and how it is unmade is the yang. That is respectively the negentropy force of the yin and the entropy force of the yang. They need to work together to keep everything in balance. And it is true to say that our research is only rediscovering and realizing, in fact it's not a discovery at all, I maintain it's not a discovery, it's realizing that really the whole nature is built with the yin and the yang. So this is the new town hall here in Brno, and you can see in this fountain sculpture in the center here all of the classic tradecraft which were revered by the communistic period. So you have hunting, and you have, you know, the cultivation of grapes and wine, and other cultivation, the wood chopper there, all kinds of the metal workers, and, you know, fence builders and bird fanciers, and someone harvesting with a scythe there, and wheat cropping again with a hand scythe. Beautiful. So here's a nice little gargoyle type water duct coming off the roof, and you can imagine what that would look like with the water spewing out of the dragon's mouth. So in Brno you'll find a number of national theatre buildings. There is the Janečkovo Divadlo. It's a masterpiece of Soviet audio engineering. You can literally whisper on stage in this massive auditorium on the other side of the city. You can't see it here, but you can hear everything that's said on that stage with utter clarity at every point in the auditorium. Also down there you will find the Mahan Theatre, which is famous in Europe because it is the first theatre in Europe, or in fact the first public building that had electric lighting installed into it by Thomas Edison. And over here on my left is another building of the National Theatre of the Czech Republic, Divadlo Redata. And if you wish to see ballet, that is one of the places to go.
Here we are in my hometown, Brno, which is the center of the other part of Czech Republic called Moravia. We will have some very interesting time here exploring the new technologies with a specialist, Bob Greenyer. And you will hear also something from Paul Harris, who also works with new technologies and our possibilities with new technologies. So it will take us 2 whole days because the topic is so exciting and there is so much to say. But still we will have also some free time, so we will have a nice dinner in the old town hall in one of the historical rooms. Then we will take a walk towards the castle, which is the center of the area, and it's interesting not only to see but also to experience the energies here. And then we will walk to the cathedral and to the old basilica with the longest history. Before even the city of Brno was built, there used to be a little village at the river where there are some artifacts as old as 30,000 years here. And we can then take a little boat and go across the dam lake to another castle. And you might think that castles start being boring after all the days, but you know, this castle is special because it's very much connected to the Templar Knights, and it's one of the possible places where the biggest Templar treasure was hidden, buried, and it might still be there, so maybe we find it. We can have some other nice dinners at the lake and we can relax. Hopefully the weather will be fine.